You don't want to hear me saying the F word.
You can do whatever you want to do. It's
It's all for the I'll sit in front of you. There you go. To Jim Hall. I'll block you out. Andy, how are you? This year, a couple of weeks ago.
I had left at that point.
You got this.
First one in, I was
Want to sit up here too?
Well, I like sitting in the back by myself. No offense to anybody.
That way you can see what everybody's doing.
All right, we're back in session. The chief has some information about South Road he'd like to share with the community.
Well, it's not a lot of it. So, I mean, I can just tell you progress on what we've done in the last couple of weeks. I've gotten really important players, and they've sent me what I need to fill out in terms of the forms necessary to move forward. With us and the DOT, we've compiled crash data, which is a necessary step towards that. Not surprisingly, in that area, between the south and the middle, we've had 5 fatalities, or 7 fatalities in the last week or something like that. It's high. And surprising to me, maybe not, the select board didn't seem surprised by this, but about 75% of our accidents at 125 are from the Kingston line to Middle Road. Which gives me pause and makes me think that we might want to start, part of my wish list with the state might be the speed limit reduction. In addition to any work we can do on the intersection. But I just want to let you know, I'm still working on that on a regular basis. And we can only do what we do each day, but I'm still on it, and I just wanted you guys to know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
We'll review the energy and efficiency committee.
Before we panel the committee, is it okay if I share some information with the board about the whole process?
Sure.
So I've spent some time doing research to make sure we're sort of dotting all our I's and crossing our T's. And so we have talked at this board level about sort of the concept of community aggregation and about the New Hampshire cooperative program. And so I wanted to kind of share a little bit more information because I think this board does need to take a vote tonight, so I can explain kind of how that works. I asked Karen to give this for you guys. So John, you don't have it, but it's like a little diagram from the coalition. But Russ and Bob and Andy, you guys should have it. This. Oh, perfect. Okay. This is directly from the coalition. It's super, super helpful. For people in the audience, we've been talking about community power. We've talked about it a couple of times. It was an idea that came out from the educational session that we had at the library from the Office of the Consumer Advocate that was like, hey, select board, we need to look into this. And so essentially this timeline basically describes how a municipality would go about the process of starting to investigate and make a plan for whether they want to do community aggregation of power. The whole idea behind this, for anybody who's not familiar with it, is that way back in 1996, when New Hampshire changed our power regulations, the idea was to use the market forces to drive down prices. And that has not effectively worked very well, partly because an individual homeowner consumer doesn't have a lot of market power. And so the idea behind this is to change the market forces in the state and to get bigger buyers with more power. So the coalition, the New Hampshire, what is it, Community Power Coalition, formed just about exactly a year ago to further this process. So community aggregation became legal in 1996, but it essentially wasn't doable because of regulatory hindrance. And that changed in 2019 when the legislature overhauled RSA 53E, which I spoke about the last time we spoke about this, which is the law that basically goes through step by step how you do this. So that happened in 2019. 21 of last year is when CPC NH formed. They initially had 13 municipalities in one county, which represented 15% of the New Hampshire population. They now have 19 municipalities in one county, which is about 20% of the New Hampshire population. So if we were to join that group, it would go up just a smidge from 20%. But that starts to be pretty big buying power in a state of our size. So essentially, the way this works now is that they formed their group last year. They were waiting on the PUC to formalize the rules of how this would work. That happened first in July of this year, and then it was approved by the Joint Legislative Committee in September, so literally 1 month ago. And so kind of everything is a go, and Lebanon just became the first municipality to get official approval to move forward to be a community aggregation. So the way this works, and I feel like I didn't understand it at first, but I do now, is that this CPCNH is a nonprofit organization. And so essentially what towns do is the governing body, so our group here, would take a vote to join this group. When you join the group, it is zero cost, zero obligation. It just basically gets you into their system. And then once you join their group, they help you do all the subsequent steps, including writing up your community power program. This is the one from Exeter that's 24 pages long and super detailed. And so basically what this group needs to do is decide that we want to join this group of 20 other municipalities and counties, and then start the process. And at any point, we can change our mind, we can stop, our energy committee can give us different advice, but this is sort of the first step because it's much harder to do all these steps on your own when this group has a whole team of people, including lawyers and risk management people who can walk you through it. So what we need to do tonight, now that we've formed our energy committee, is officially join the coalition, and there's a joint, it's called a joint powers agreement that we will have to sign. So what other towns have done is the select board has voted to agree to sign this after review of council. So Karen would have council review it, it's like a 60-page document, and we would officially join the coalition. The requirement of us is that we would send a representative to their board meetings. Presumably that would be the chair of the energy committee, but we can decide who that is. And then once we join, we start the process of making an aggregation plan. You have to have your own aggregation plan because this group can help you contract and get the low rates, but it's the town that becomes basically the energy supplier and the biller. And so each town has to become their own community aggregate. And then once you become an aggregate as a town, you can decide whether you want to go out and find your own business or whether you want to team up with this much bigger group to do it for you, which I would think with 99% chance we would do that. And so that's kind of the bare bones of how it works. I think this is a no-brainer because at this point, the reason this step doesn't need to go in front of the legislative body is there's no money involved. The aggregation plan has to go as a warrant article because it involves some changes in town and some money and funds. And so that plan would go in front of the voters, but this step is just done by the board. So I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, if that's sort of how you understood it, but I kind of was a little murky on how it works, and so that seems to be the way it works. Questions from you guys? John? John, do you have questions? He was just talking.
Sorry. All good.
You're good? Okay. Russ, Bob, questions about whatever?
I don't know. Appreciate it.
My only question was, I just read something in Seacoast News that Exeter, I think it was 5 towns, Exeter, Portsmouth, Newmarket, all formed one.
Collectively?
Yes.
That I don't know, that's possible, right? You can aggregate with whoever you want. And so that may be possible, and that's one thing that I think our energy committee is gonna have to look into. Most of those towns are already part of CPCNH, so I'm not sure why they would make a subgroup, but I'm not sure. I can't really speak to that.
So maybe that committee can then nominate one person to maybe meet with that group.
Might be, yeah. Also, as more towns join the board, right now, every single town that has joined has a board seat, but they're about to cap out, and so then there'll be board elections and et cetera. So there may be some sort of subcommittee stuff going on. But this is a super great organization that's a nonprofit and has a lot of brain power and a lot of know-how. And I think will be absolutely so helpful to our energy committee, which we're gonna staff tonight, to sort of not have to have them retrade the wheel and just make it much, much easier if we, part of our thought is if we can get on top of this before next year's town meeting, that would be amazing. If we can't, it's gonna put us back a year. And there's gonna be all these high costs in that interim. So we were hoping to sort of fast track it, but that may not be feasible. We'll have to see how it pans out. So I would like to make a motion that we decide to join the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire, pending review of the Joint Powers Agreement by our legal counsel.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Russ, you have a thought?
Well, I guess I hear what you're saying, but I guess I was coming into this thinking that that's what this group would assess first, but I guess what you're saying is that, I guess, why don't you tell me?
Yeah,
what
so,
about- Again, I'm sorry.
so the joining the group is sort of like your first intent that you want to go down this road, right? Sort of like teaming up with the like-minded people who have all the skills. What the energy committee needs to decide is, do we want to form an aggregation plan, right? Do they think it's a good idea for the town, et cetera? If so, they have to write it up, and they have to follow all of these many, many, many requirements in the RSA. Then they have to bring it to us, then we have to bring it to the voters, then the voters have to approve it. Once we decide we want to do aggregation, and one thing I really like about these aggregation plans is they explicitly state, we will only do this if it will save townspeople money. Like, it's very clear. It's not like we're just gonna do this because. It's like, we will only do this if it will save money and drop rates. So if the town votes for us to become an aggregate consumer, then the energy committee will have to decide, do they want to use CPCNH as our supplier, right, as our proxy to go find us our cheapest rates on the open market, or do we want to do something different? Do we want to be like Brentwood alone and just go find our own rates? Do we want to team up with Fremont and do it that way? That would be something that I think the energy committee would decide on. So joining this coalition is sort of like the prerequisite step before all the rest of that happens, because as you see from here, you join first, then you form your committee, then you start going down this process. And until you sign a financial agreement with them that says, hey, we're gonna use you to find us the cheapest rates, no money changes hands, and you can withdraw at any point. So there's sort of like there's nothing to lose. And that's what really helped me to understand. And I looked at some other towns' minutes, and I looked at all the other towns that joined. They had a brief discussion at the select board where they were like, hey, we think we want to look into this, let's join this group. And then they just took a vote, and then the energy committee or the aggregation committee did everything else downstream. But this is sort of how you start the process.
But if we form the energy committee, we have them look at the benefits from joining, or the pros and cons, basically, of joining the coalition, and then we could get a recommendation from them.
I think
That's what I was
it depends what
thinking.
you mean. I think that what we're looking for from the committee is, do we want to aggregate? And if so, who will we use to supply our energy, right?
Or do we
So-
want to do the coalition?
Right, but sort of joining the coalition is sort of, like I said, sort of the entry step, which if you look on here, it's the first thing. Because then you use all of their free resources to help you decide what you want to do.
Can I just ask, so, I have a high level of confidence that it wouldn't be problematic for us to join and via a motion tonight. However, I did come into this with the idea that this advisory committee would be staffed, and then we would let them take an initial look and assess. And are you concerned at all if we don't vote tonight, that we'll be behind the 8 ball, or would you be okay knowing that we get these folks on the board and give them a meeting and we,
I think you could do it either way, honestly.
I
Yeah,
don't-
I think it
I
just
just-
depends on your timeline and if you want to try to get it
yeah.
for town meeting next
Yeah,
year.
I feel this is extremely urgent. I think we all do. That's why we've gotten to this point. Obviously, it's impacting people, severe. It's only gonna get worse. Excuse me. So, I'm definitely in favor of moving forward efficiently and expediently. But, if it's not going to cause a big issue to wait, I guess that's where I was coming into this. I don't doubt anything you say. I guess I just feel like I need to digest it a little more as well. I appreciate you doing all the research because, again, I'm sure that's where, it's a reasonable expectation that if there is no harm in joining the coalition to gain more knowledge, that the group has already gathered, then I think that's all to the good. So I guess that's where I'm at right now.
I mean, I really think you could do it either way.
Yeah.
I literally cannot imagine that anybody in this community doesn't want to research this potential cost savings,
Right.
Intervention further, given what we're hearing everybody say about their electricity.
I think the tough part for me, Jen, is just that from the jump, like from the beginning of this, just me, but my premise was, and my focus was, let's get smart people in a room that, not that you don't have smart people in this room, but smart people in a room to look at this specifically and to advise us about joining the coalition. And what you're telling me tonight is,
I think that was us not fully
Right,
understanding how the process.
and I appreciate that that's what you're saying, and I guess I'm just saying I'm not quite there, and I don't mean that as to put, diminish the research that you've done. I'm not 100% there, and I feel like I'd be going back a little bit on the premise that came forward with. But maybe, so that's where I'm at.
Okay.
So
Other comments?
Yeah.
I'd like to get I kind of agree with that. I really would love to see the committee formed, have them kind of get together, have a meeting, and then come to us with a recommendation to what they want to do.
Sure,
Where they
and
see
I know
us
that's how
going.
we talked about it initially, just looking at how all other towns have done it, it was flipped the other way. And I think we just didn't understand that because this was a completely new concept to us as of whatever, when was that thing? August, when we had that education, this is all new to us. And so I think it was only when I started reading minutes of all the other towns, when it was like, the board voted unanimously to join, and then they formed the committee, that it sort of made more sense to me of how it is traditionally done in other towns. If we feel more comfortable with letting the group make this decision, I mean, the vote is ours, so they can make a recommendation to us.
No, of course.
That's fine, it'll just
Absolutely. And this
delay
isn't-
it
Yeah, and that
a bit.
is the point, that this is an advisory committee.
Yeah.
To bring stuff to us, and then
Absolutely.
we can.
So I mean, if you feel more comfortable waiting, we can do that, it just makes it that much less likely that we will get this for the next year and not have to wait another 12 months.
We have until what? February?
Yeah, there's no question that this group has to kick into gear quickly.
And that, also to address the separate question that had come up of, when I talked about Exeter, and that Exeter had an energy committee, but also an electric aggregation committee, and we were like, why do they have these two committees? Like, that's crazy. What it seems like is they may have interpreted the RSA like a little bit differently, or maybe that RSA got amended, because when you look in the RSA, it says, the governing body may form an electric aggregation committee. So I don't think you really have to.
Bob was looking for the
I have it. I have it here. And so I think in their case, because they had a busy energy committee already, they made a 5-person smaller subset to come up with this document with this group helping them. So I don't think we would make a separate committee, but we would be putting a pretty big ask on our new energy committee that essentially they're really more like an electric aggregation committee to start, because this is the time-sensitive thing. And then a lot of the other stuff, that we talked about is part of it. So I don't think we have enough people to make 2 separate committees, but I think that explains why some towns did it that way, because this is a big lift to do this.
I just want to say again, I really appreciate you doing all that research.
I just want to understand it.
I know, and I 100% appreciate also that you're trying to help move things along, so to the extent that I seem like I'm contradicting myself,
No,
I
I
apologize, but I
Because I think we didn't really understand how it worked.
Yeah, totally.
So before I take some public comment, do you want to keep your motion on the table, or do you want to withdraw?
Yeah, I'd like to keep a motion on the table for now, because personally, I think it's a no cost, no harm, kind of almost like just a rubber stamp thing. But I also, if I don't have the votes, then I would be happy to have to put it back to the committee.
Jim, you showed 329 Route 125. I get really nervous when anyone uses phrases like fast track and can't see any reason why. I think I'm with Russ and with Bob that I feel that the whole purpose of creating another committee specifically for our energy needs is to review things like this. So
Yeah, I hear you. I think the only thing I'm thinking is just timing.
I get
It's tight.
that.
But if we miss it, it just goes another year before we can join. It is what it is.
Jim in the back?
Jim Burrow, Scrabble Road. Has any community saved a single penny by this
They have not because
government coalition of cooperatives that, go ahead.
Oh, you're done. You done with your question?
I'm done.
Okay. No, because the final rules were literally just approved 30 days ago to allow for formal applications. And as I mentioned, Lebanon is the first town to get an official approval. They're likely to go live with this in the spring of next year. And as I said before, the whole idea behind these aggregates is these towns are only implementing it if it results in a lower kilowatt hour cost than what the consumers are paying as a default rate.
Lois Dio, Quality Falls Road. First, I like the RSA. What is the RSA even?
Yep, I provided at the last meeting as well. It is section 53E:1 through 7, I believe, 1 through 9.
Next question.
Find it right on the web.
So, we'll get many questions in a little time. You, sir?
Jim Hazard, Mohawk Lane. Just a question, I second about speeding up. I fully support the committee. It's just that we're gonna have a committee and we're trying to tell them you need to rush. I feel like you're putting pressure on them to maybe not do such a good job and maybe we should back off of that. But I'm trying to understand, other than, yeah, we gotta pay, like, what's the rush? Is there?
It's just cost savings for
Just
our
cost.
town. That's
Because
it.
perhaps if we
That's
wait a
it.
year, I think the more members they have, maybe the lower the cost. So
Probably, right?
maybe if the first people who go in, kind of, there's not gonna be much savings anyways. I just think we should let the committee.
I think even
do a
if
good
we
job.
got approved, so like, let's say we managed to pull this off and got it approved at town meeting, we would not go live for some time, right? Because there's a first wave, a second wave. So, none of this is going to happen super quickly, but I think, my electric bill is really high now. So that's the only time urgency I feel, but I understand it's a balancing act. We don't want to mess it up because we're doing it too fast. I agree.
Jim?
Jim Rowe, Scrabble Road. So I'm gonna pay the town of Brentwood to reduce my energy bill that I currently have the ability to search for anyone I want to, but now I'm gonna have a government agency that's able to usurp my abilities to look for a provider that will cost me less, and it's gonna cost me more in tax dollars for a government agency to provide this service that I can do myself.
I'm happy to answer that. That's actually not how it works. So you essentially right now, right, you can use Eversource default rate. You can go out in the market with Direct Energy or Joe Schmo Energy and find your own rate. And what this would be is it would be a third option, which would be the coalition rate. And it would be your choice to opt out of being in that coalition and pick whatever service provider you choose. It is 100% up to the consumer, and the RSA goes through very clearly how that works. It would not cost you anything in tax dollars because any programmatic costs that require to make this happen are folded into the rate. So only the people who choose to get their power from the coalition subsidize that program. And it's actually in the RSA that you are forbidden to pass any of those costs onto a consumer in town who chooses not to participate. So though I understand your concerns, but the RSA protects against all of that. But thanks for the question, because I think that's a really important question. You can read I encourage you to read the RSA because it goes through, it has all the consumer protections in there.
One more question and then we're gonna take a vote on this.
Michelle Student, Middle Road, you said that the town would do the billing.
So the town, Eversource would do the billing in terms of they own the lines, they still are like they are now, right? If you have like Direct Energy, I don't believe you get a bill from Direct Energy, right? So it would still be that way, but what the town would do is the town sets the rate and the town sort of partners up with Eversource on how to do like meter upgrades and stuff like that. And so that's what's a little bit different, but it's very, very similar to like how Direct Energy interfaces with Eversource. It would just be a different group, which would represent, 20-25% of the state, or just us if we go alone, that would be interfacing with Eversource as the supplier, or whatever they call it, the distributor, and the person who actually generated the energy, that would be something we would go out on the market and try to get a better rate. Part of the reason why this is likely to work is that you guys might have heard that Eversource only sets their rate twice a year, and these type of coalitions are not bound by that and can set their rate and change their rate over time, and that's thought to be one of the reasons why this will likely result in cost savings for our consumers. It just gives that, that bargaining power that we don't have now.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
We need to move on, we have a lot to do tonight, and.
There's a lot of information on the web about all this
I
stuff.
can tell you the motion's not gonna pass, so
Can I just put it out there to,
I'm spending more time arguing than letting you answer the questions, so go ahead.
you said, Jim, that it doesn't cost us anything to sign the document tonight and join, but obviously there'd be some cost if you actually want to move forward with them. So what would that look like?
So that would be, if you join the coalition now, you have to go through all the steps of deciding to become an aggregate, getting it passed by the voters, getting it approved by PUC, and then when you got to the point of picking where you're gonna buy your energy from, if you're gonna buy it from the coalition, then you join, I forget what they call it, but it's like a contract with them, and that's when the cost would come, because they have to pay their lawyers, the people who go out and do the bidding, the risk management folks, and there's some programmatic costs, just like there is with any energy company, and that gets folded into your rate. So let's say the rate was gonna be 15 cents, maybe to cover the programmatic costs, it's 15.8 cents, whatever. So it folds it in, and that cost would only be relevant to the people who choose that supplier. Because like I said, you're free to choose whatever supplier you choose. There's really no, there's no controversy here,
Yeah, there is plenty of controversy.
Excuse me.
Please
The
stop talking out
only
of turn.
purpose of this is to try to save you guys money and me money too. That's it. There's no, I don't know what people think the agenda is, and if you don't like this, that's your prerogative. But I think we would be nuts to not look into this in our town, because I think it can save us money. And that's what everybody tells us all the time when we talk to voters.
Jim, since
They
you
want
had
to
your
save
hand up
money.
before Michelle, I'll let you talk and then I'm
And
moving on.
Bob had his hand up at the beginning too.
So would you
But,
like to refer to Bob, or would you like to try to mold your question?
no, I would like to ask my question is, so we're gonna hand this town over our electric costs? Yes.
No,
You guys are gonna decide what this town pays in fees?
no.
Yes.
We're gonna try to find a lower rate for our townspeople if they want to use it.
Why is the town getting involved? Town government should not be involved in this.
Because under the regulations passed in 1996,
Well,
this is allowed and encouraged to try to drive prices down in a competitive market.
and it hasn't been approved. Right.
Well, and that's why a lot of this says it's optional, and if you look at Exeter's plan, it says right on it, we will only flip the switch if the rate that we can get is lower than the default service rate.
But the other issue is, if I decide to opt out, it also says in the law that property owners will have to pay some of the money on this, the costs.
That's not correct.
No? I'm obviously looking at it a little different than,
Only people who partake in this supplier.
so how is a town aggregated then? If you're gonna aggregate a town, it's the whole town or none. How does that work?
If you read the RSA, it goes through in great detail. You have to communicate with every single townsperson with a 30-day notice. There's a 15-day public meeting that makes it very clear how people opt out or opt in.
Great.
It's all spelled out in the
And
RSA.
again, it's the town government.
Jim, I gave you one question you've asked for. Bob?
Bob Stevens, 16 Northrop Drive. I want to applaud you all for your diligence here. I've been at countless town meetings across this country, frankly, and the one problem that is universal is that votes take place too soon after motions are entered. If you guys are pumping the brakes, which I applaud you for doing, that is the best thing to do until questions like have come up here are answered, not to your satisfaction, but to ours. And I also want to say that I appreciate all of the homework that Select Person Jones has done here. I'm not knocking it at all, but when I did not apply to be part of this committee, this energy committee, and I did not take exception to it once I got down to where it was going. But this shocks me, frankly, that this is coming from the select board before the energy committee is even formed. Like, this is the very thing that I thought the energy committee was going to discuss. So I applaud Select Person Kelly's comments about how maybe we should pump the brakes a little bit, let the committee be selected, let them do the homework, or use the work that Select Person Jones has done already and amplify it, answer questions from the town's people. I like the idea of pooling our resources. We have examples of it already in our municipal waste disposal. We collaborate with other towns there, and it seems as if we get a pretty good rate because of it.
And there's
So-
multiple states that do this community power that do get really good cost savings.
Right, so process is important to me. I think the process needs to satisfy your customers, and that's us. And we really need to be diligent, but we also need to use discretion and move at a very deliberate pace here. I applaud the pump of the brakes, and if we defer this until people can read the statute and do a little bit more investigation on this, I think everyone would benefit from it.
Like I said, I actually don't have a problem with that. I think it's just in my research, that's not how it's traditionally been done, and we just sort of misunderstood, because this was new to all of us.
That's okay,
So
20
if we're
million
gonna do it
Frenchmen
that
can't be
way,
wrong.
That's fine, I don't have a problem with that, it just will slow down the process, and so be it, you know? I mean, we probably cannot get this in front of the voters by the spring, so it may be a moot point.
Well, it's
you know?
October now. See, I keep hearing that too. I don't really fathom that because it's October now. I think town meeting is in March. So, you know, that's a long time to me. I think there's plenty of time to get this done.
It's a big list.
Unless there's some other deadline that I don't know about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Warrants have to be in by February 7th.
All right, I have a motion and a second on the table.
That's sooner.
All in favor of,
I'll withdraw my second.
That's fine, I can withdraw my motion. It sounds like the town wants to go a little slower, so that's fine.
all right. Back to the Energy and Efficiency Committee.
Yes.
I know I missed the week with a purpose, I don't think was accepted.
That's been done.
That's been done.
Oh, that's mine, where's?
Oh, sorry.
It's me to look
I
at.
gave it to Bob, I'm like, where'd it go?
We were sharing.
We have 9 applicants.
2 are new.
Yes, 2 are new since last meeting.
But Andy, anything, obviously, you want to go back over, anything?
No, I was fine with the purpose statement that was drawn up, but I just wanted to make sure we had a vote on it.
We did.
Russ, do you have an idea of how you wanted to read through the 9 people and come up with 7, or?
I guess that's a good question. I'm open to anything. I mean, I have my own thoughts now that I've been able to look at all the applications, but I don't know.
I think
I think it's an
you
awesome
had
group
mentioned
of
you
applicants.
wanted, I think it is great.
Yeah.
And I guess my thought would be is we had 7 that applied and we just recently had 2 more. I know you had mentioned doing 7 with 2 alternates. So do we have 9?
Yeah.
So I would
We have to
say
we just have to decide who should be
first
out
come,
there.
first served, you know? First 7 and then 2 alternates. I think that would be a good one,
I
and then
think
they get
it's
together
worth,
to select the chair.
like how John talked about when making that econ development committee, kind of looking at the individual skill sets. When I look through here, we have like a financial person, we have a lawyer, we have someone who works in solar, someone who works with sort of oil-based delivery. We have somebody who works for Eversource. We have multiple people who work in the energy field. So I think it might make sense for us to really think about which of those skills do we need in our voting 7 and which do we want as alternates. I think like most of our committees, the alternates will be pretty heavily involved. I know like whenever I'm at planning board, the alternates, end up being involved. And we have the perfect number. So I think it's just deciding, especially if the first task before them is this aggregation, who might bring the best viewpoint to that. And then the secondary sort of initial goals was, what other communication do we need to do to town about cost savings? And some of these people seem like they have like a little more of a skin in the game on that.
Yeah, I mean, you got somebody that's in economics, right?
Yep, yeah, that's like the finance
So
person.
you
So
got
we have a
finance,
really,
you got the
really
attorney,
good,
you got an engineer.
it's a great slate that we have here. And we have some newer people, some younger people, so I think it's a great, I think we lucked out in these applicants.
There's one other way of doing it, which isn't exactly, well, I guess it is a little bit scientific, but there are 2 of the 9 who, at least I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there are 2 of the 9 who already serve elsewhere. If we wanted to have them be alternates, and then you'd still, as I'm looking at the roster, that would be obviously still jam-packed with a lot of talent, and experience, so that was one thing I was thinking about in terms of spreading things out.
Bringing some new people into the work.
Getting new folks serving, whereas other folks are spread a little thinner. But yet, like you say, the alternates are actively involved, in the discussions, and then of course, in some cases, they'll need to be voted, they'll need to be voted on. So that was one way I was looking at it, and I obviously think.
I like that idea.
And I also, one of the things that I thought of is because you got a couple people that are within this pool that have businesses that are related to energy.
Yeah, a lot of them
And
actually.
I think, yeah, quite a bit, but I think I would like to have them have an agreement that they're not gonna be financially benefited
Right.
from
Sure.
whatever they're gonna be proposing.
Yeah, I think that's
So
a no-brainer.
I'll send over to Andy and Karen, but it's, you know, pretty basic cookie cutter, like, I just am not gonna have, I don't want there to be a conflict of interest or.
And actually, I don't really see, do you foresee this committee, like, I don't really see them saying like, hey, buy this from Eversource, or buy this
Well, I
from,
don't see it, but I would just like to
they'd have
remove,
to recuse from it.
remove that,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that, you know, we already hear enough of people questioning things, right? So I don't wanna leave that window
Totally.
open where you're gonna have somebody, giving somebody the ability to question it. So if you just say, you guys are agreeing to this, we're done, and then I know I don't have to worry about that.
totally.
Yeah, I can, so that actually gets to an important point about this, which is while we're laser focused for the first, whatever, 20 minutes, half an hour on the Community Power Coalition, as we know from our discussion of creating this advisory committee, it's about more than that. And sure, that's the time-sensitive aspect, but this is really about a bunch of folks who know this issue and are willing to be committed to learning as much as possible and helping the town and the residents understand what they can be doing to try and get through or, you know, improve their situation related to electricity costs and energy costs. There's a whole educational component to this as well that I think will be helpful and not at any cost to the town, obviously. This is just, you know, but I could see a situation in there where, you know, somebody says, well, I think you should, well, we want to recommend that people should get solar panels on the roof. Well, there's, you know, somebody's in there with a solar connection. Or somebody says you should go to a heat pump, and so on and on it goes, and they can, you know, to your point, Bob, I mean, I think they can recuse themselves or whatever, and that's why we'll have these two alternates, and I think, you know, I think down the line, it's possible, it is possible to come up that it's literally their business, and they're, you know, part of a group that's recommending that we put out this information, and I think they'd have to step back from that.
Sure. I think, in my opinion, the recusal would be if their personal financial company was being advocated. If somebody who works for Eversource is recommending that you know, use the New Hampshire Saves program and contact Eversource, like, I think we'd have to kind of let the committee parse that out, because like, if you just happen to work in solar and you say, hey, you gotta think about solar, I don't
I
think
don't want to pick on
that's.
solar, I'm
a
saying there's
any
any number of, we have,
I mean, we
you
have
know,
people that work for
gas, oil.
Eversource, who work for Unitil,
Yeah.
who own their own energy company.
Right.
Yeah, and I just don't want
So-
somebody to say, so I think recuse is just
Yeah,
kind of like, I
conflict of
agree
interest.
that I'm not gonna benefit from this financially
Financially.
from what I'm putting forward.
100%,
I didn't get put onto this committee in
To make
order to
money.
make money.
totally.
And so I think if we have some little blurb
Yeah.
that says, you guys agree to this,
Yeah.
you're not gonna financially benefit from this.
Basic conflict of interest.
We're protected,
And oh,
we've
by
done
the-
our due diligence.
and oh, by the way, that's just to get to a vote of the advisory committee to then bring that forward to us, so it's,
Right, yeah, this is a purely.
But I think what
advisory.
Bob's saying is,
no,
upon
Upon the nomination.
nomination,
Yeah.
you agree to sign this.
It's
right,
a
no, I agree.
prerequisite to serve.
Whatever I said, it sounded like it didn't, I did.
I think that's.
No, I think you agreed. I just took it as
Poorly.
it would be more towards when they vote on something, but this would be up front.
No, yeah.
We're being proactive instead of reactive,
Right.
in case somebody comes before
Yeah.
us later on and say, hey, wait a minute.
That's kind of a no-brainer,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a conflict of interest.
So we had one idea to make the two current board members alternates.
So that
Is
would
there,
be Kristen Aldridge Cheek and Matt Levinsky
Yeah.
as alternates,
That's my recommendation.
and allow some of these newer people to participate.
Well,
I think that makes good sense. These
We
are
got 9,
interested,
and we
motivated
needed 9,
people.
so, yeah, that's reasonable.
Yeah,
John?
First Street.
Do you have any questions?
Doug Fenn, One Gopher. I don't remember if Jen or Russ had mentioned this, but in the committee, there was a student on one of the committees. Were we lucky enough to get one of the high school students?
Oh,
For this committee?
it didn't apply.
But is my memory correct? There was
I'm trying to think. That wanted to be part of it?
be part of it, and I just thought, for a future outlook.
I
It would be
haven't
great
heard
if they-
anything. Karen, did we have anything about a student? I know there were some UNH students involved with econ development, I believe, or with one of our committees in town.
Yeah, I
I
didn't
may
see.
be mistaken, but I thought there was a discussion right after the library that, if I remember correctly, you had investigated something through Exeter, and there was a student, high school student on the board.
Oh, I know what you're thinking of, I think. One of the towns that I quoted, like Lebanon or whoever I had looked at, had a student on their committee. That when they populated their committee, they picked like one of the high school students to hold a spot on their committee. So I think that might be what you're remembering. It was just.
I just thought it was a good idea.
I think it's a great idea.
It is a good idea.
I don't think we had any student applicants though.
I'll stick for another night, but I've been trying to think about possible ways to, form a youth board or something like that too, but that'll be another day.
Jim, you showed 329, 325. I just, wouldn't it be up to the applicants on how they apply for it, if they wanted to be an alternate or not? I mean, you guys are picking that part for them instead of just trying to pick the best applicant for the position, let alone, in other words, you're making up, you're deciding for them if they have too much on their plate or not.
So I think we would be offered to be alternates, like, of course, they don't have to be alternates if they don't want to be.
We might have some people that decide that they'd rather be alternates than being it depends. I know,
We have a
Matt, for
great
example, I
group.
know is retired, so he probably would love to do it because he's retired, so he's
Yep.
got time. But I know Keith Paul, he still works full-time, so he might say, I'd rather be an alternate.
Do we want to put the 9 people in a room and see who's looking to be,
Alternates.
who would want to step aside and be an alternate? All 9 say they want full membership, then.
They all applied for full membership.
Can they not do that?
So I think we pick our committee and we move forward.
I mean,
Oh, hold on, too many people talking at once.
Sorry, I can't.
John, go ahead.
I said they all apply for full membership. I think it's our responsibility. They told us that they have the capacity to serve in that way, and now it's our job to make that determination. And let's get this thing started. It sounded like we were all in agreement.
I would say this. I feel comfortable with what I recommended, but I also think that they can still do what was just mentioned, which is get in a room together and decide if somebody, right? I mean, if they brought that.
They
back-
just have to bring it back.
They just
Bring
have to bring
that
it
back
back.
to us.
Bring it back to us, yeah.
Because they're gonna have to nominate a chair, they're gonna have to nominate a secretary, they're gonna have to do all that stuff.
And if these folks decide not to be alternates, then they'll have to put out a request for other alternates. So that's how we form all of our committees. Should we read out the names? So I'll make a motion to impanel on this committee Thomas Palma from Peabody Drive, Keith Paul from Lyford Lane, Chris Magnuson from Wendell Drive, Gabrielle Kelly from Mohawk Lane, Anna Hurd from Stevens Drive, Robert Radlinski from Three Ponds Drive, and Richard LeBrecq from VZ Circle. With 2 alternates of Matt Lipinski and Kristen Aldridge-Cheese if they choose to accept.
Do I have a second? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Oh, we have to do a roll call, Joe, because John's on. I'm an aye, Jen.
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Russ?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Motion carries.
then, will we contact these folks about setting up a first meeting time, Karen? Okay.
All right. Jim, come on down.
Yeah, Russ, do you want to go or do you want me to go?
I couldn't hear that.
The question was, do we want to send a board member to the first meeting? And Russ said you would attend.
I'll probably go for a second.
Welcome. Jim's here representing the Brentwood newsletter. And we're having a discussion on newsletter content from the select board. Jen, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Sure. Jim, can you clarify, do you have an official position at the, I know you're
Yeah.
helping in sort of a
I'm-
pseudo-editorial capacity?
I'm the leader of the editorial review board.
Editorial
and
review
I
board.
guess I'm now the director of customer satisfaction.
Oh, you've got two hats
Oh,
on.
yeah, and I got a raise and I get a free copy of the newsletter mailed to my house.
Congratulations.
But no, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks for letting me, I think this is a
Thanks
better
for
way of
coming.
doing it,
Yeah.
now than me just talking to you directly.
Absolutely, that's why, Jim and I had exchanged emails about meeting offline, but we thought, I can't speak for the whole board. So we thought that we would just have the meeting in public. So I really thank you for coming. I think you are well aware of the issue, but so everyone else is. In the most recent Brentwood newsletter that came out in early October, so just 2 weeks ago or something, we have had some concerns about how information from the select board was being communicated and some confusion about authorship in terms of what was coming from the editorial staff versus what was coming from the board. And so we wanted to just see if we could work together to move forward and try to make some progress in this area. I think this is a similar issue that we've been dealing with for a while. And so would like to see if we can kind of just get some clarity and mutual understanding moving forward.
I mean, you had sent an email to us with, I think there were basically 2 questions in there, kind of. I don't know if you want me to read it.
Do you want me to kind of, I can read
Just an
it,
answer,
sure.
I mean, I honestly, if I was gonna summarize it, I think you have there were 2 questions. One was on page 10, which was basically a news from the select board that you sent in.
Yep.
And the highlights from the select board minutes. I think that's one question.
Yep.
The other one had to do with page 4, which was the announcements
Sure.
and how that was done.
Yeah, so I can summarize. So the news from the select board has me as an author. Andy had asked me to start doing that when I took a seat on the board.
And you're not the first one, this has been something that.
We sort of reinvigorated it.
Yeah, like in the past, Dave was just telling me that he used to do it
Yep.
years ago, so.
Yeah, I think that's why you wanted to start doing it again, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
it was a
it
good
was
thing.
brought up during
Yeah.
the talks, that
Right.
it was
But it
something
was a good
that
thing.
was lost.
Yep. So, I've been submitting pieces, and then I think it was just confusing that directly after my piece, which I try to keep short because I'm aware of space constraints in the newsletter, there was a 3/4 of a page highlights from select board minutes with no author. So that was just a little confusing. It could have looked like I wrote it, but then there was an editor's note, so it became clear the editors wrote it.
Right.
So it was sort of like a little bit of an editorial, a little bit of a snippet from published minutes. So that was just a little confusing. I think the bigger issue was on page 4, where there was an announcement under the town announcement section. And if you look at the town announcements, about 30% of them have an author and the others don't, which is a little confusing to start with. And there was something that looked like it came from Karen, which was not written by Karen and contained inaccurate information about the vote that we took tonight. So there was just, we didn't know who the author, presumably someone on the editorial staff wrote that. But to a reader, it looked like it was coming from Karen, and it did not. So we just wanted to clarify sort of how that came about and how to prevent it from occurring in the future.
Well, I think so on page 10, yours is called News from the Select Board,
Yeah.
and like you said, we definitely put down that it's from you.
Yeah.
In terms of space, I mean, there's no space constraint that I know of with you writing something. The only thing you and I ever discussed about this whole thing was that if it became more of your opinions of things, we would move it to the, and that's good. I don't mind that, we go to the opinions page. If it's just more of a summary like this, then it would stay here and be all news from the select board.
Yep.
And I think we're good there.
Yep.
All the rest of this, again, has been in the Brentwood newsletter in the past, depending on if there are topics of interest or space allows. These are just, and it says highlights from the select board minutes.
Yep.
There are 4 items. All 4 of those, they have the date of the select board meeting. I went through and checked. They are absolute cut and paste of the text from, it's not Brentwood newsletter, it's no one, if I was gonna put an author, I'd have to say it was the person recording the meeting minutes. I mean, these are public minutes. I don't think it needs to have an author. It's obvious it's just coming from the minutes, public documents that anybody can get. We were highlighting them just because we thought there was interest and we got space. On the one that has June 21st, talking about the 4-day, 10-hour, 4 10-hour days, we followed up and put editor's note. The BNL reached out to the town administrator to clarify the above new personnel policy. Following are the questions asked and answered and received. And it says, the question and then the answer. I think it's kind of obvious here that that is our editor asking those. That is not statements right from the minutes. Followed up, I think Robin followed up with you.
That was the communication that Robin and I had through an email. If you're going to do that in the future, could you just let me know that that's the intent of the information, that it's going to be public?
Absolutely.
That was never made clear.
Okay. But I mean, there's no intent to try to make it look
No,
like
there's nothing wrong
somebody
with
else.
the
I mean,
information.
I don't think there was any more intent of that. We will do that if, in the future, if we're speaking to you, either email or by voice.
Just, for me, personal experience, especially being in insurance, when I get reached out to by somebody, I always think it's gonna be put up on a big bulletin board in a courtroom, and this is what you
It's
said.
91A. It's
Yeah.
a public.
So,
That's your
I just kinda, FYI.
It's a courtesy.
Yeah, it is a courtesy.
It's a courtesy to let you know what the intended audience.
Anytime I send an email, I'm assuming that thing is gonna be in a courtroom. That's me.
I think the bigger question, Jim, that I want this board to think about is if there's going to be communication from the select board to the public, whether it's through minutes or through a write-up or through an announcement, how does this board feel about that information coming from us, the board that generated it, versus the editorial staff of the BNL? And, should there be a clear division there, or should the information from the select board actually come from the select board? So I think it's.
If that's, you're kidding, I was a question for you to discuss.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'll just say from our perspective, because it kind of came up in the question too, you said, I personally would prefer that information come from Karen, Andy, or another SB member rather than the editors of the Brentwood newsletter. But again, I don't understand that part because you're elected officials and you don't have the rights to public information. I mean,
Oh, sure.
like I said, we're just cutting and pasting meeting minutes.
Sure, but I think when our minutes are 4 pages long and there's one paragraph pulled out, that there's a reason for that, right? There was an editorial decision made about, what's of interest to the
Well,
town.
I think that's
And
just
I
why,
think we
because a
need to
lot of.
clarify who's the communicator from the select board is sort of my question. I agree with you, they're public minutes.
Well,
Totally agree with you.
I mean, because if you go down this path, I mean, we have the right to publish things that happen at the state house, right? The state reps can't come to me and say, no, you can't print a summary of bill this or that or whatever, right? We can print standardized test results that come out on the state website regarding the schools. I don't have to have the school board's permission to do that. Now, again, Same thing, if we wanted to go down and say, make a new thing called the police walk of Brentwood, like some papers do, right? I don't think the chief would be saying to me, hey, you guys can print that without, we need to be the ones to do it, so.
Right, I mean, I understand the editorial board has full right to make their own editorial decisions.
But I don't feel like this is an editorial, I'm just taking important parts of past meetings and putting them in the paper for the viewers to read. I mean, it's coming right from your minutes.
Sure.
It's just-
No, I'm not questioning that it comes from our minutes. I just think there's a little bit of confusion, and I'd like to see a little more clarity on who the information is coming from.
Sure.
I'm curious to how the other board members, how you feel about it. I mean, and the bigger issue, honestly, Jim, was page 4, not page 10.
Oh.
Page 4 is the much bigger issue, because that was an inaccurate misstatement made on our behalf.
So, let me just, two things, I guess. I just want to jump back to Karen asked, she said, would it be all right, basically, it would, be nice to know. And you said, no problem. I think that was a good ending to that conversation. I think going beyond that and suggesting that, hey, too bad, so sad that, we can do what we want. I don't think that's what you're here to say. I don't think that's what anyone feels. I mean, the town is literally in this, with support, financial support. There's leeway that the newsletter, editorial board, and what have you, has space to operate within, but I think it's only cordial that, like you just answered, I thought was perfectly acceptable, which is, she asked, you said okay. So I just want to leave it there as opposed to what happened after that, and the comments after that, to me, are not in keeping with trying to work together and trying to peacefully work together. And as far as to Jen's concerns, so as I look at the page, it's her section followed by highlights. I could see where someone would think those are her highlights. I see where it says editor's note, and maybe it's just a matter of just making it more clear that that's a different section, and it does look like one page. That's the only thing I could say. Maybe it just.
Well, maybe under where it says highlights from select board minutes, we could go to a little note that says.
Derived from the book.
Excerpts directly from.
Or compiled by the editorial staff.
It's not a big
One
one.
of those lines, the dark line.
That's what it sounds
But
like.
yeah,
I think though what Jen is just saying is, so she's doing this
Authorship
section,
clarity.
and no, I know, but I'm just trying to.
Yeah, no, she was.
Yeah.
I wasn't something else.
Nope, okay, I'm good.
well,
No, even if you put, those big, thick lines that you can put, just highlight it.
We'll do a better job of delineating between what you submitted and what is coming from just us.
Sure, I think that would make sense.
Absolutely.
And then how about the page 4?
All right, so on page 4, we have the public announcements page, right? So, and as you said, some of them are sent in by other people, and we list who they are. Some of them are just snippets that we take right from the town clerk's office, and about the dogs, civil forfeiture being served, the elections 101 class, that they were doing, that through the Daphne was having. I mean, so we're just taking snippets from other pieces of information, whether it be town hall, or website, whatever, and repeating it. Now, on the there was one that we put in, select board seeks volunteers for potential energy and environment advisory committee. The board seeks to assemble a group of volunteers to form an energy and environment subcommittee. The following information is tentative and subject to change. The purpose, I don't think I need to go on anymore. At the end, it said interested residents should contact the town administrator. Yes, it says with your interest no later than November 1st. Now, I have to say, when I was at the meeting, it was September 6th, when this came up, and I have the whole minutes, but there was, if you read in there, November 1st was mentioned by somebody, I don't know. And there were questions asked back and forth. Robin was sitting behind me. You were asking Robin what dates she goes to press, when does the issue come out. I mean, I clearly heard that you wanted us to advertise this to try to get as many people to know as possible. I think that's what we did. I think we suspected the date. We used November 1st because that was in the minutes, it was mentioned. We put tentative and subject to change because we suspected it would. I don't know what we did other than not guess the exact right date, but we did put subject to change and tentative. I don't know what we did that wasn't what you were expecting.
Did you get an official notice from Karen of what needed to go in for that advertising?
I don't think so, no. But I think we just did it based on the summary of that meeting that night. We went to press on September 26th.
There was definitely an inference from that meeting that the board wanted it published in the newspaper.
But it was in this edition, and that's why I mentioned it in my piece. So I think there's like a little confusion, and maybe there needs to be better coordination between us, because it almost was like a double announcement that didn't agree.
But I don't think it did, I don't think it didn't agree. I think we're both, if you read
Well,
both
so what
of
happened,
them,
Jim,
they're
is that
both
last week's
asking-
meeting,
Yeah.
when we decided to handle tonight,
Right.
someone in the audience raised their hand and said, I thought people had till November 1st.
Right.
And we said, oh, no, sorry, that was a mistake.
Correct.
So it just created a confusion in town because the date wasn't
But
what we
like I
had agreed
said,
on.
we're going by, we printed this, before that information in those other meetings were held and dates were changed, and we put tentative and subject to change. I thought the purpose was get out as much, get it out to people to sign up. I really, honestly, we were trying to help out and do our part, doing what we were asked. I don't think we tried to do anything wrong.
Oh, I don't think there was any malintention here.
It sounds
It just
like
created,
it.
no,
What's
no,
the
no,
point?
no. It just created
What's your
confusion.
point?
If I read the transcripts from last week's meeting, I actually used Google Docs to do the transcript, you can play like a recording, and I'll do it, right? And you're right, there's a question that comes, it wasn't clear, it may have been Lois who asked about the.
I think it was Becky.
I couldn't even hear it, couldn't transcribe it. It did say the chair responded, we didn't post that, so we're not quite sure. The vice chair, actually, I sent an email to the newsletter staff today to try to clarify because there's multiple different things in the last newsletter that report information from the select board, but 2 out of the 3 of them are not authored, and there's no author listed. The only one that has author listed is my piece, and I did not say a date because we hadn't decided to a date as of the last newsletter, so I did request to the newsletter to identify who was the author of that piece. That said November 1st because I did not have that from the select board, so we will try to get it clarified. Select board member Kelly said, have we received a response from the newsletter? Vice chair, I just sent it today, so I don't know, but I can check. I had just gotten the email.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah, that's
just-
why I said, we weren't even planning on bringing it up at that meeting, but it got
Then-
brought up.
Russ, you can call it.
It's happening, sorry. And we had a beer, I called him Russ, Ross said, this is something so this is where, he said, this is something I want to clarify. Just to be clear, the Brentwood newsletter, someone authored something that was presented as information from the select board, but it wasn't from the select board. Is that what we're saying? The vice chair said, correct. And then continued, I've asked for some clarification from the newsletter, and continue to request that every piece in there should have an author attributed to it, even if it's coming from the town, so that we know what's coming from who. And I have posed in the mail a question to Andy and Karen about my personal feeling, is that anything from the select board that appears in the newsletter should probably be written by one of us or by Karen. That would be my preference moving forward, because that's not what happened in the last edition, and it has obviously created some problems. Russ said, I don't know why this is so difficult. And the vice chair said, well, we'll see what their response is. Again, I think it really jumps.
I think the solution here is that an announcement from the select board should probably be authored by Karen or by the chair or something, just so that there's never going to be this type of confusion. Unless it is already published, like if you're pulling it off of the town website, or Karen's announced it somewhere else, and you're just pulling it. But in this case, it was created by somebody that wasn't in the town,
And again,
so that would be my
I
request.
would, I agree that I think we did that this time. I don't think we did anything wrong other than your dates changed after we went to the printer. But we even put in there subject to change. And I think maybe some of the people the 9 people who came in, maybe saw it in the Brentwood newsletter, and that's why they applied. And I'm being honest with you, I'm not trying to like, fix on this, I really am trying to understand how it got, I feel like it got kind of ugly, like.
No, it's not ugly, it's just clarity of authorship, that an announcement from town hall that has Karen's email associated with it should probably come from Karen. And she did not write this, she was not consulted on it. And while we might have discussed various dates, we had not agreed on any date by the
In the
time
minutes,
it
it
was
said
published.
November 1st, you could read when you saw
We
it.
didn't vote or decide
On the
on
6th,
that.
on the 6th, November, that date was mentioned there.
It might have been mentioned, sure.
Well,
Okay, I think we're going around and around. I think you efficiently cleared up my concerns. Russ,
Karen, how do you feel about announcements from town? Would you like them to be clear through you?
Karen, just pass it over.
I think either is fine, as long as it's clear.
As long as it's accurate.
What did she say?
She said she just wants to make sure it's accurate. We'll get it published.
So, I don't want to drag this on, but what did we think that was inaccurate on this one?
The November 1st date?
That was just the extra, that was,
Taken out of the minutes?
that was taken out of the,
I mean,
that was.
I understand what you're saying, and, you know, it was
No,
discussed,
and
we were discussing a lot of different
I think
days.
Robin tries really hard to do the right thing on this, and,
Absolutely, and I want to be clear, I don't think this was malintentioned. I think there's just confusion, because I had said, hey, I'm going to mention it in my piece, and then there was another, so like, we need to coordinate better, because I don't think we both needed to do it. And so I think we just need better communication about who's going to be the communicator on issue A and issue B, because we basically published 2 different things in the same edition that didn't agree.
the one thing I
It's not
said,
ideal.
we maybe got over, you did ask us, it was multiple times asking us to get it, we felt really happy and honored to be asked to do it on behalf of the board, and that's why we put it in there.
I think that's where the confusion comes up, because we talked about using the newsletter, and then I said a couple times at the meetings, like, I'll put it in my piece, I actually wrote my entire piece about it. So I think it's just a communication failure, because we really only need to communicate something once. So we just gotta try, like, let's just think about this, you know, kind of digest it, but it's just a communication
And you and I can work
issue.
on that going
It's just,
forward.
we gotta communicate better.
All right.
should have a communication committee.
Well, and we can talk about getting the communications committee involved in some of these things. I think we
did I
should
say that already?
ruminate on that. From the wall that we're talking about, I think we'll ruminate on that. Thank you.
Jim, Rose,
Appreciate it.
Let me just, I just want to say that I think this is crazy, because they took excerpts from what we could see, any public, it's public. They took it from the minutes of the meeting. They took it from they didn't make it up out of the clear blue. They
And that's
took
what we
it from me.
determined. That was what we worked out, that everything was good, that they took excerpts. We just wanted separated to make sure that it doesn't look like we wrote it, that it says it's excerpts from,
Well, that was the page 10 thing we're talking about.
yeah.
Right, okay.
So, I think everything worked out well, and we had a productive meeting, and
Awesome.
probably talked 20 minutes longer than we needed to, but.
We'll see how it goes.
But we
No,
needed it.
Anytime.
The new director of public.
Customer satisfaction. Customer satisfaction.
Do you have pens with your name on it like that?
No.
Okay.
We don't have a budget.
Give us an outline for budget if you would like.
All right,
Thank you.
budget. Conservation.
I'll make this easy. Flat. I'll make a motion to approve the flat budget. I can sit right here.
Well,
Yeah, pictures,
Oh.
in my package.
Yep, I got it.
So,
Yes.
Can we just have quiet in the audience, please? Conservation's coming in flat at $13,652.
We didn't spend that much last year.
So far, we've only spent $485.
Right, and probably we might be running into some appraisals on some of the conservation properties, so that's why we'd like to do this.
What line item would Dr. Wonder? Professional or?
Yeah, anything had to do with like, if we were gonna do assessments and stuff like that.
Would probably go into that
Yeah,
240
yeah,
professional
so
line
I think
item.
our professionals will we're gonna be hire an appraiser to go out there and appraise some of the property that we're looking at potentially conserving.
So in this past budget year, we didn't have any properties that went to that point.
We have an RFP that's going out for appraisal of some property that we're looking at conserving, but we can't disclose it.
There is also a fund for that, above and beyond the
If it
other
exceeds.
funds.
To be clear, this is 30% lower than the budget I inherited when I took over the chairmanship 2 years ago. And we were asked to take a good hard look at it, but some of these things are spaceholders because we're figuring out what we need for money and what we don't as well. You know, there's things like dues to memberships. We're members of the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions, so we pay dues for that, and then if others want to join something specific, they can. Office supplies, I guess, is obvious, and we put something in as a placeholder for postage, although I would prefer to leave even the blank ones in as placeholders. And then, yeah, the audit expenses and easement monitoring, the idea is to use volunteers, and I don't use volunteers just to save the town money. I think it's really important that the volunteers understand the process. You know, if I'm at work, and, you know, my tax bill is paid by my wages, that's where the term, I think, I paid at the office comes from. Well, that means that I have sort of a sanitized impression of what's really going on, and I would prefer the volunteers get their hands dirty, and I think that they would prefer it too, to actually do this stuff rather than hire it out. But we can't always do that. Right now is a very busy time for most people. So we want the money there in case we need to hire a professional to do this stuff. But our intent is to do as much of it as possible from the start. That's why we carry these budget items.
And Bob, what falls under easement? What kind of costs would go into that line item?
Yep, so we have a stake in easements around town for open space. And those stakes are held through agreements with people who provide funding, for instance, a natural resource conservation service. They impose on anyone who's holding that easement, a primary or secondary easement holder, to see to it that these are audited, that the rules that are set in the deed are met every year. So someone, there's different ways to do it. You can do it by aerial photograph, by drone, or you can walk the property. Again, I'm trying to get the volunteers to do that.
So that's why you have a zero cost for this year, because did you do some easement audits, but it was volunteer?
Well, if we do them, they're going to be between now and the end of the year.
Oh, gotcha.
But we're working on doing it with the volunteers.
Gotcha.
So we'd like to continue to carry that money and use volunteers wherever possible, but we may spend it on what it's assigned for.
Thank you.
The other thing is just to recognize, Conservation Commission is going to be working to try to do that with
Preambulation.
preambulation. I couldn't remember the word when it was a conservation.
Sharon knows it.
Yeah. So that's something that hopefully we can get them to do, which might save us some cost on that.
And I guess there was a question last night at the budget committee if there would be a cost for that.
I don't think so. I mean, I'm trying to, I think we can find volunteers to do that. If Concom doesn't step up, I'll solicit other volunteers.
And I did tell Bob that I would try to be around as the select board person to make sure if we needed to have one of the town officials going around going, yep, drop a pin here, we know that this is, so yes, like when Jeff did it.
I received those documents just recently that Karen made me aware of them, and so I'm gonna review them and see what we need to do. I think we have to coordinate with the abutting town to, in some cases, although that's not certain yet, I think it's true. And if that's so, then I have to coordinate our schedule with them, which means that will affect my schedule, Bob's schedule, and any other volunteers that go out there to find these things schedules.
We just talked about it last week, so.
No, I'm not complaining at all. I'm glad it came up. I have a feeling that this is the kind of thing that, I mean, one of the things I do a lot of is inspect dams, and sometimes those things go many years beyond where they're supposed to be inspected.
Kind of forget.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what, every 7 years?
So do you want to leave the perambulations line at $1 for 23? They can take the year to verify the town lines, boundaries, and markers, and then we can get quotes if we need to replace any of the granite bounds on markers in 24.
Yes.
And we can also, now, I thought Jeff Bryant had done GPS draw.
On some of them.
So if we do that, do you need to have still the markers?
We did that for extra, so you'd still have to verify that the markers are there. I think the GPS coordinates would help you pinpoint exactly where they are located, but they still need to be there. And then
Sorry.
a select board member from each town has to sign off verifying that that information is true and accurate.
So I thought we would start with the statutes and just know what is required. Does the abutting county need to participate, or can they just, be made aware of it? There's some issues regarding GPS coordinates, and I run into this in surveys with datums all the time. There are different datums, and points can be very different places depending on what datum is used. GPS is the same. There's multiple GPS datums available, and the information that I've seen thus far doesn't indicate which one to use. Those are all things that we've got to get our arms around, and but I think it's very doable, and I just don't know if there's a deadline, and if so, how far beyond it we're going to go sorting this out.
The statute will probably tell you.
So
I don't think
I'd like
anyone's
the
gonna
conversation take a side street for a minute. Let's get your budget finished, and then we'll go back to.
I make a motion for the 13.
Did you have any questions?
No, but I'll second the motion.
Motion and a second for 13,652. Any further discussion? All in favor? I'm an aye. Jen?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Russ?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Carries. Now we can talk more preambule.
Okay. So the only reason we're talking about the preambulation is what Karen
Because of
said.
budget
Yeah, because I brought it
Might have
up.
affected budget. Okay, so I guess the bottom line is, I got the information and I'm getting my arms around it, and we'll get it done.
Karen can give you a list
I
of
don't
months
think
when they
anyone's-
were done.
They're old.
They're definitely not more than 7 years.
No, I don't think anyone's gonna haul you out of here in handcuffs though, Mr. Chairman.
I don't think so.
That's a risk.
Although some nights, I may, appreciate it.
He's willing to take it.
Is that an offer?
He does have handcuffs.
All right, here we go.
Alright.
We wanna talk about the mower?
Do you want to talk about the mower?
Yeah, so you weren't
Oh,
here.
yeah.
We
Yeah, you
discussed-
wanted to know.
We wanted to, we've gotten pricing from a local supplier, Chappelle or Chapel, or I'm not sure. And they're very helpful in getting pricing for 3 different options. One was a walk-behind mower, which is a field and brush mower, will mow down the windshield trees. Another one was a tractor that would drag some kind of thing, and the third option was to buy an attachment that an ATV could pull behind it. My initial thought was, well, we need some way to mow, because we've been getting volunteers. There's been problems with equipment, flat tires, broken equipment because of the nature of the field. The woods were logged recently, and there's some slash in the field where they staged the logging, and that's causing us problems. Long story short, the walk-behind mower was $5,000. The tractor with the pull thing was over $13,000. And we could probably get an attachment to an ATV for 3,000 plus, except we don't have an ATV. So that's a ballpark idea of how much these things would cost. We're talking about building some fields here, and I thought if we get them more, we can maintain trails as well. But the trails thing, it's pretty rare that we need to mow a trail. I'd like to be able to do it if we can, and that's not something that's easily done with a tractor. It has to be something small. But I think we can kick that can down the road because it's not something that anyone's calling us up about and saying, even though the trails are terrible. So therefore, we thought, well, I knew Recreation had a tractor with a mower, and at Concom, we decided to just see if we could use the Recreation tractor or the DPW tractor. And it looks like the Recreation's tractor wound up with the cemetery and back here, and but it no longer has the mower attachment. Wayne may have that. We're not sure. I'm gonna talk to him about that, or we may need to buy a lawnmower attachment for the existing tractor. That's our new plan.
Okay. Just lower cost plan, just see how it goes.
I think so.
And then the other thing we had discussed at Conservation is, because if they have money in their budget, maybe we look to see if one of the highway guys would want to utilize our mower for the town to go mow the field on like a weekend or overtime or something. They pay for that out of the conservation budget. At least
it's twice a year.
That would be cheaper too.
It's cheaper than buying a mower.
Yeah.
We had originally, and I'm back in Lakes volunteerism, so we had originally thought volunteers would do it, but, you know, I'm not getting any younger, and long story short, it would be fine with us, I think, if some young person did it on a weekend, and the town, you know, the Concom paid them a little bit of money, twice a year, for a few hours, so.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Joyce? You bring reinforcements, or you come by yourself?
You still got
It's
reinforcements.
a one-woman show here.
Are you pretty confident
We're coming tonight with the final budget for the cemetery at
fairly confident
13,670.
that
It's an
we'll do
actual
that?
increase
Yes.
from last year,
I'm just thinking from the budget
0.03%.
committee.
So you can just have, if you want to have a conversation, just go in the hall, please.
We did increase our electric by $100. We're hoping that that's going to be enough. Most of my bills right now are running $20 each. I don't really have a whole feel for how electric should be. I did send out to each of you, I did a comparative budget for all the area towns. There's I think 8 towns on there. So if anybody wants to know what the towns are that I looked at, Fremont, Kingston, Greenland, Epping, East Kingston, Kensington, Raymond, and Newton. I did not include Exeter because Exeter is in agreement with an association. So their cemetery stuff is totally different. It's not municipal, it's an association. The proposed budget amounts that I took were appropriations for 2021. The average was $26,000. I know right now that we're saying we're $13,670. Our mowing portion that we would pay for doing the mowing is about $7,500. So that brings us up to $21,170 if we put in mowing with ours. And I will say that our biggest increase was with wages. It's $1.90, which is an increase of 7.44%. If you have any questions, Jim Hajar is here and willing to speak to it. But if you have any other questions, let me know.
Joyce, where does the mowing line item live right now?
It is in with the highway department.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of bundled because they do all the town
Right.
properties and it's all absorbed.
Do you think it needs to be as part of yours, or it's absolutely fine to keep it where it is?
I think we're happy where it is.
Okay.
It just makes it easier because then that way, when it gets paid out, it's done that way. I don't know if they do it quarterly or how they do it, but they do report their hours to me. I record the hours that they are in the cemetery.
But it's all under their budget?
Yep.
Okay.
It's a one number contract.
Yeah. Okay. So overall, the budget goes up about 5%,
Right, and it's about $654.56.
and most of that's electric and wages.
Right,
So,
most of it's the wages. And honestly, we are lower than most towns around us.
I don't have a problem with this. I make a motion to approve this budget.
13,670, I'll second it.
Russ, any questions?
No.
Motion and second for $13,670, an increase of $600. About 650. I'm an aye. Jen?
Aye.
Bob? Russ?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Motion carries. Yes, Mr. Lang? I'd just like the record to show how pleased the trustees are with the fantastic job that the superintendent has done.
I've noticed a grand improvement
Yes.
in the cemetery since she has taken over these.
Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you guys. Thank you, my trustees are awesome.
Information systems. I happened to sit on it. And, this new platform that does motor vehicle assessing, and they just bought into it, so you can see how it works for them, and then
Yes, that is through Avatar, I believe.
Would it combine some of these instead of using multiple companies?
It would, well, it would just increase the Avatar, because she already, Dad already used it for town clerk, so then it would increase that cost because we have the support fees for, it would offset the assessment fees and everything that would be approved to. But if you were to purchase the software, we have a capital for software already to be able to absorb that cost, which is that cost.
We'll let them try it out. See
Yep.
if it crashes and burns.
So the hardware support line, the 451, that is a level funded contract through Block 5. It's year 2 on a 3-year contract. The increase in that line item is due to the additional email addresses requested for planning and zoning board. Software support is BMSI, Intuware, Avatar, and Patriot, which is used for fund accounting, payroll, AP, dogs, town clerk, and assessing. So that just has the inflation escalator built in. The website I have left here as the $2 a quarter listing fee increase, which is here. The annual billing fee remains the same.
Sorry, they're done. They did really good. They did really good. For
they did really good.
Violet?
Oh, I reduced it by, general supplies, I reduced it because we don't have to do this.
Questions?
Yeah, I have one question. So you're gonna be at Buckhorn next Monday?
Yes.
Okay.
So Karen, the general supplies, it says 350, 350. Did you mean to reduce it?
I meant to reduce it. So
Okay.
it was added to.
Because that was when we got rid of Vimeo? Is that-
Yes, so
yeah.
I meant to reduce it to 100, and so it's 72,470 is what I'm
Okay.
looking for.
72, 470?
Yes, sorry, that's a typo.
Yeah, okay.
So I'll make a motion for the 72,470. Do we know what the percentage increase is on that?
6%. Maybe 5 and change now that she just dropped it by the way. I'll second that, 72,470.
Motion and a second for 72,470. I'm an aye. Jen?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Russ? Aye. John?
Aye.
Regional associations.
Regional associations was 17,500 budgeted. The regional associations subcommittee had appropriated about $12,700 to be distributed amongst those boards. Those have requested their appropriate funds, and so the committee is requesting level funding for next year. They'll begin to review applications.
And that 12,797 is a complete end of year number because they've done all their disbursements.
Yeah, they struggled last year to
Yeah, I know.
actually.
They didn't need to.
Because nobody was asking for
Yep.
it, so they did what people asked for, so.
Yep.
Make a motion for level fund.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second for Trustee John, any questions?
No.
Aye.
Aye.
Bob? Aye. Russ? Aye. John?
Aye.
Motion carries 17,500.
Is that all?
That's all right, yeah.
Assessing.
Something was tabled from last week, and so I did reach out to Fremont and Sandown to see what their assessment contracts are. Fremont pays $32,000 annually, and Sandown pays $5,300 a month, which breaks down to, for 2,730 parcels, which breaks down to $1.94 per parcel. And with Jim's requested increase for 23, he's at $1.22 per parcel.
What was the Fremont parcel?
Fremont didn't give me. I didn't give her her parcel count. But she's got two, so their assessing contract is through MRIs. They're both through MRI, so I would assume that their rates are comparable.
So our rate looks like it's right on
Our
target.
is lower, much lower.
It was 50 cents a parcel lower.
Sorry, it's the number back. Then I think we did our due diligence that we wanted to do.
Yep, so make a motion for the 47,781.
I'll second that.
Motion and seconds. Any questions from the board?
No.
Aye. Jen?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Russ?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Can you send me that and ask Peggy for her possible comment?
Thank you for looking into that, Karen.
So it sounds like Jim's giving us a deal here, huh? Okay, awesome.
Documents?
Make a motion for the consent agenda, we haven't done it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a motion for the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Jen?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Russ?
Aye.
John? Did you see the consent agenda?
I probably did, but I'm not sure exactly which pieces going to it.
Okay.
Figure out what I'm there.
So John's gonna abstain. Is that okay with you?
I have 2 election warrants that I'm requesting you to sign for the November election, and you need to sign in both spaces on both forms. One is signing the warrant, and the second is that you're certifying that you have the
So this is saying that the November election will be held Tuesday, the 8th day of November, at the Brentwood Recreation Center, 190 Route 125, from the hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Aye.
We win.
Aye. Jen?
Aye.
Aye.
Bob? Russ?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
You heard it here first.
I didn't already know, where that?
Why do you have to do that?
The state document.
Required.
Here, which one am I signing? Both?
Both of them.
What if they say no?
What happens if we said no?
I mean, I guess
I think the difference is setting the times.
some towns have different hours, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Some towns do 8 to 8.
We like to get started at 6:30.
We actually found out that we had more early turnout with the 7 than we do with the 8.
I bet, makes sense. People's work schedules.
Requesting a change order for this highway addition building. Instead of 4 16 by 12 doors, we would like 4 16 by 14 foot doors with hardware. It is an amount of $6,900.
We have one.
Do we know why? Just an ordering issue or
It's, he wants more capacity.
more space?
Better, because you will make the doors.
Yes.
Yeah, we want to knock the door.
Less chances of damaging something.
And we do have that money somewhere that we can We will find it,
Make a
okay.
motion.
Wayne will find it in his budget.
Okay, I will second that one, then if we've got the money, I'll second it.
Motion and second. John, did you hear that?
The door is bigger.
Yes, for $6,000. 4 doors are bigger.
Ah, that's better.
Aye. I'm an aye. Jen?
Aye.
No, 16
Bob?
by 12 is
Russ?
16 by 12.
John?
Aye.
The rec commission would like to have a food truck at the Hunt Walk. And we have very limited options. But JoJo's Food Truck, which is now located at the Bessie's Lot on 125, has offered her services, but she has no way of transporting her food trailer to the BRC. Wayne said that he would be willing to move it if you would allow it. So if we were to have her sign a waiver saying that we are not responsible for damaging the property, if that were to
I
happen,
want a hold harmless agreement.
is that
A hold harmless.
Let's start with, is rec okay with there being a food trailer at their event?
yes,
Then I am okay as long as they,
sign a waiver?
and is conservation good with JoJo's? Or whatever.
It's a rec commissioner.
It's your action.
Oh, I thought conservation wanted it.
No.
My bad.
So rec and JoJo's.
I'll make a
sign
motion as
waiver.
long as they sign the hold harmless agreement for everything.
I'm definitely tripped up on this one, so.
We gotta drag it down to 125.
We're gonna put it up.
I do get what we're asking, but I guess I don't know why we have to do that.
There's no other
We don't have to.
that have,
It's
that can
just,
drive themselves.
The problem that, well, there are, but they're very expensive. So a lot of them are requesting a down payment or a minimum of $15,000 or $2,000 to attend the event. So without knowing how many patrons are going to be attending the event, Andy's not comfortable committing to that dollar amount.
Gotcha.
So JoJo's not requesting any payment, whatever she sells is great, she just can't find a way to relocate herself for the evening.
I'm fine if they move it and then bring it back. I just want that hold harmless if this thing flips over and blows up, that she's out of room. I'm an insurance guy, man, so.
Small town
just
problem.
watch too much Final Destination.
Too many movies.
It's what, it's like a third of a mile or something.
Yeah,
I think we're done.
all I needed to do was hit something on one of the roads.
If all the parties involved are happy with it, yeah,
And it's just straight.
It's cheap. I mean,
It's
cheap-
true.
Cheap will give them an escort, right? Like,
Probably.
that's a light.
they probably will.
But,
Okay, but so at what expense to the town are we? The town is,
10 minutes of
Yeah.
an employee's time to bring it from point A to point B, and 10 minutes from point A to point B back.
And this is a town-hosted event. If it wasn't a town-hosted function, I wouldn't be